thank you very much for joining us again, Chris. Obviously, especially yourself, as you've become almost like the figurehead for Mizuno, really, a public face for R&D and engineering. So always great to hear what you've got to say. Matt McIsaac from the European Tour Workshop. Matt, what are you up to today?
I've just finished up with a player about 40 minutes ago, so I'm still in workshop clothing, so forgive me for that. But yeah, we've had a nice day out in the range and then back here on the track.
We're allowed to say who the player is, or is he a non-contract? Or
he's non-contract, so we'll
keep that one under wraps. But it might not be as exciting as it sounds.
Middle of the road.
potential star, like mature player.
Yeah. Young lad, doing very well, playing well. He's on the massive up. So yeah, it's good to be there on the journey and get some good clubs in his hands. So yeah, he's walked away happy to go and practice some bits.
Good. Fred, where are you today?
Well, I'm home. I just woke up. I'm in Arizona, guys. It's 7 a.m.
But you've just been off at tour school with Hannah, correct?
I did, yes. So my girlfriend Hannah went to Symetra Tour Q School. She played really good for 2 rounds and had one rough third round, but it's a good experience. You know, Q School is brutal, right? So sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't. But it was nice. It was very hot though. It's in Palm Springs, about 44 Celsius, 110 Fahrenheit. So yeah, it was a tough week.
It must be a tough time for all sorts of kind of pros that are trying to break their way through onto the big tours, because it's almost like hard to switch up and switch down at the moment, right? Because I know you were supposed to be up in Canada at the moment.
Yeah, no. So I have PGA Tour Canada status, and I was supposed to fly out to Canada for 2 events in a row, 3 events potentially, but Canada kind of changed the regulations. Before the tour told us that we can come if we're fully vaccinated and if we provide a negative test before we fly out. And then they changed the rules to only Americans and American residents. And I have a P1 professional athlete visa and I'm Swedish. So all of a sudden I wasn't allowed to enter. So lost some money on the flight and hotel there, unfortunately. And now I'm stuck in the US. But, you know, it's difficult for everyone. There's no European Tour Q School this year. The Asian Tour is shut down. Everyone are trying to find a tour to play on. So, yeah, everyone in the same boat, really.
So there's a few careers stagnating. I guess if you're not playing well, that's not such a big problem. You can go away and it's a good break. But you were in pretty good form, right?
Yeah, no, I was playing great. Played a couple of smaller events, playing really good. So it's frustrating, but, you know, it's the same for everyone. You just kind of try to keep the form going, and eventually you're going to get an opportunity and then try to take advantage of it.
And you just hope that your good week is the right week.
Yeah. Hopefully my good week is at first stage of Korn Ferry Q School. So I'm just going to keep that in mind. And that's in the middle of September or end of September. So it's coming up.
And where's that going to be, Fred?
So I actually haven't got my site announced yet. We picked from 12 different sites. I think I'm going to end up in Utah, but I'm not sure yet.
And I reckon the standard must be pretty hot.
Yeah, I mean, this year it's going to be probably the best Q School so far, because there's no European Tour Q School. Asian Tour is shut down. This is the one place where pros can play. So if they can get here, travel is obviously more difficult, but if they can get here, this Q School is going to be a tough one for sure.
So Matt, is that reflecting the sort of picture in Europe as well? I know, again, like saying no European tour school this year.
Absolutely, yeah. You look at years gone by, the guys who have come over from the States who have started their journey in Europe. You know, they've kind of played around, played different stuff, maybe played Asia, played Europe, then ultimately now have ended up back on the PGA Tour in the States, and you know their career's gone that way. So it really is. It's a starting point for a lot of people, but it's a good way in, especially the European Tour, because it's, you know, all the travel is fairly low key. It's quite easy to get to each event. You know, it's a good starting point. So yeah, for the people that aren't making that journey over, it's been a tough couple of years. You know, it'll be interesting to see what it does for the standard and how people kind of find their feet now.
And without getting too press release to your corporate, we've just signed up a partnership with the Clutch Pro Tour over in Europe.
So we've partnered with Clutch Pro since they began, and we're just getting more and more involved. We've got a lot of guys who are coming to us through the tour. We're going to players through the tour. It's a great feeding platform for the up and coming golfers coming through. So the more we can get involved with that, the better. At that elite level of golf, it's where we want to be. It's where we want to be seen to be producing the best gear for the best players. So yeah, we're pretty pumped for that going forward. That we'll be more involved.
Just explain to me, how does that Clutch Pro Tour fit like the sort of hierarchy of European golf? Because I understand European Tour and Challenge Tour. Where does it slot in underneath that?
So it started during lockdown when a lot of people weren't able to play. A lot of tours had shut down. So they started the Clutch Pro as a relatively low-key tour. And then we had a lot of main tour players because they weren't playing tour, because they weren't traveling, and they were home in the UK. They thought, yeah, we'll go and peg a few of those up. So they had some big names play all of a sudden. It got a lot of interest. It was the right time. They were playing nice golf courses. It's run by an ex-player, so he knows the deal. He knows what people want to do. They know that they don't want to be traveling too far. The courses that we want to be playing. So it started for all the right reasons, and then it just went strength to strength. So it started relatively low, and then all of a sudden, we had these main tour players playing, and now it kind of, it's linked in almost with some challenge tour events. So yeah, it really is kind of the platform down, if you like. So, you've got your main tour, you've got challenge tour, and then Clutch is really just kind of trying to break the ceiling of those two. So it's a very good feeder platform, if you like.
You've had some sort of player success this year as well. So you've had OJ Farrell's come through that Clutch Pro, hasn't he? I know he's got a really good background out in the US as well. But again, maybe someone who was almost like looking for a place to playing through that, he's managed to get on the Challenge Tour and tied 6th last week in Denmark. Correct,
yeah. And Frederick, you'll agree, the more you're playing with big names and you're playing with, real good golfers at a good level, it just breeds confidence. So, the more you can put yourself shoulder to shoulder with these guys, it doesn't almost, the tournament itself is irrelevant. As long as you're playing with, at that level, the best golfers, you can then take that to the next level because you have had that experience at that level, and that's worth its weight in gold a lot of the time.
Any chance we'll see you back this way, Fred?
No. Well, maybe eventually, but we have some mini tour events similar to the Clutch Pro Tour here in the US. We got the Swing Thought. We got a bunch of different events. I'm actually playing something called the Big Money Classic by the end of the year, where the winner gets 100K. So that's a bigger type of mini tour event. And just like the UK, a lot of good players over here now also trying to just find tournaments to play. Luckily, the Korn Ferry has had a full schedule, but players that had status on PGA Tour China, for example, that tour is gone. PGA Tour Latin America, they had a couple of events. And guys like me on PGA Tour Canada are going to have to find other places to play. So there are some good mini tour options in the States, luckily. If they die out, I will come stay in your basement and come play some golf over there.
We call that a shed over here.
Okay.
So, Chris, back to the States then. And you've had some nice success the last couple of weeks with, say, sort of emerging players. Grayson Sigg. Last time we all got together, we had Keith Mitchell on the call, and we were asking Keith, who he would recommend Mizuno went out and recruited for the next generation, and he said we already had the guy, and it was Grayson.
Yeah, Grayson he's had a phenomenal year on the Korn Ferry. He had already earned his tour card essentially by being in the top 25, and now it's the playoffs where you're just improving your status throughout. And to win that first event right now and move up to number 1 on the Korn Ferry, that gets you into basically any event you want to get in. And, we knew we had something special with Grayson. He's a solid player, just an incredibly consistent ball striker. I know that's what Keith was pointing out is like, if you need a 5-yard draw every single time, straight out of the car, that's what he hits. Like, he's just a very steady, very consistent, great player. And he went out and he, got that victory, which was fantastic. And Keith actually last week had a really nice little run to continue his playoff run also, birdie in the last 3 holes to then all of a sudden make the next event. So, advancing on to the BMW after the Northern Trust last week. So really, really exciting to see some of our young guys playing some great golf.
And we're going to try and get out and see both Grayson and Keith at the back end of September. So we're all trying to figure out our travel plans at the moment. But I'm kind of hoping one of you 3 boys will be out there and we can probably maybe get out on the course with Grayson and get a close look at his game. Because, again, from an outside perspective, I'd love to know what the difference is between a Grayson Sig at his peak form right now and real sort of top of the tree.
It's interesting, going back to the start of the pandemic when we were doing our Instagram lives, we spoke with Grayson and he was fresh off the heels of, I believe he shot at least one, if not a couple of 59s. So he's he's a guy who's obviously, when he's on, he's a world beater. He can, and he's not afraid to take it low, which I'm sure Frederick can speak to, especially when you're building your way up on all these tours. It's all about how many birdies can you make. These guys are taking it really deep all the way up until at PGA Tour level, when obviously these guys on your normal course, they would eat it alive. And now it's just the courses are getting harder and harder. The fields are getting deeper and deeper. I'm really excited to see what he's going to do at the next level, because I think it's going to be something special.
Right. So much as I'd love talking to everyone about the state of the tour, most people are going to be dialing at this conversation to listen to you talking about the new products, Chris. So let's unwrap them one by one. A little bit of a technical overview from yourself, maybe a few of the background stories, and then maybe Fred. I know Fred's had some of the products in hand. I know he went out and did a little filming with you as well. And Matt's had a little bit of experience on the workshop. So hopefully everyone can give us a little insight from their own perspective. First one of the products I want to look at is the new T22 wedges. So the T22 and the STG driver coming to people in October, probably on the shelves about middle of October, Chris?
Yeah, that's about right. I forget. I don't have the exact date in front of me, but yeah, middle of October is when those are going to get going, probably in the entire Western world.
But people would have seen them for the first time back at the Open Championship, because that's when they kind of arrived on the European Tour workshop. Matt, you were one of the first people to take a look at them. So what was your first take on T22 when you saw it?
T20 was my favorite wedge for sure. So that was it's coming off of a wedge that was already quite a firm favorite of mine. So it wasn't a huge surprise to see the kind of tweaks that have gone on. When you're looking at wedges, I always like to look at them from an artistic point of view before anything. How they look, simply how they look. We put them down. You look at them this way, you look at them from shelf appeal, you look at them down at dress. Without knowing anything about the technology behind them, how do they flow? How's the shape? What's going on? Because ultimately, from a short game perspective, you want to stand over the shot and go, right, this is how I see it. This is what I want to do with it. This is how it's going to come out the bunker. So, that for me flows into how the wedge looks. You're trying to hit this shot. You're trying to see this. You're trying to feel it. And that's where I think the technology side for me sometimes is secondary to that. So there was some tweaks that I noticed straight away. How the hosel flows into the face was a big one for me. When I put that down, that was the screaming one where I thought, that looks, it fits. It looks like some rival wedges that have had popularity. It looks really quite sexy behind the golf when you put that down. And ultimately, if you feel like that over a wedge shot, then hopefully the outcome is a little bit better.
And the one finish caught your eye, didn't it, Matt?
Yeah, the copper was great. And the more we've actually done some stuff with the copper now, that a few of our guys have got it in the bag, and it only gets better with time, because a finish really kind of it's not the same as a raw, because it doesn't go as rusty, but it just kind of chromes off a little bit and it looks super fluid. It's just everything about it is a very clean and pleasing look, I think.
Chris, so give us a little bit of the technical backdrop. So obviously the first thing we all noticed is that wonderful kind of denim copper finish, which you'll go into in a bit more detail. Mm-hmm. One of the stories you covered was the T7 was a super popular wedge, especially with the tour guys, right? And I know like Luke Donald still plays T7s. I don't know if you've got T7s in the bag still, but there's a lot of T7s still out there. Very traditional. With the T20, you kind of up the performance. You know, all the data will say the T20 is probably a superior wedge with that weight very high in the blade. But perhaps cosmetically, not everybody took to it quite as easily. Is it fair to say that the T22 is almost like finding that middle ground between the two?
I think that's very fair to say. The T20 was tradition for the sake of tradition. It was everything, like nothing crazy going on the wedge. It was the shaping, the size, the execution of the weighting of it was very, very traditional. T20 took a step more aggressive, where we did really aggressively taper the back blade. That tapered back blade allows us to adjust the center of gravity as you flow throughout the set of wedges. So on that T20, if you looked at the 46 degree and compared that to the 60 degree from behind, you actually see two very different looks, where the top of the blade on the 60 degree has a lot of angle, has a lot of thickness up towards the top portion of that blade. As a result, the center of gravity is moving higher in that, which is a good thing on a wedge, but the execution of it was a little bit more radical than the T-Series guy traditionally has been used to. Additionally, the sizing of it was a little bit larger than the T-Series had been for previous generations. T22 was almost like that marriage between where T20 was and where T7 was. The sizing is a little bit more T7, more compact, shorter from heel to toe. There is some weighting going on as well, where we do manipulate the center of gravity ever so slightly, but it's not quite as extreme. So it's almost like that, almost like we're sneaking a little technology in on that T-Series guy.
Talk to me about, so over the ball, what can people expect to see? And I've got the notes in front of me, bevel top line. Hosel blend is something that really pops out here. There's something about the meat in that area there.
Yeah, it's funny. You know, Matt nailed it perfectly in terms of what the shape looks like at a dress. He nailed everything we were going for. So the actual shaping at a dress, we're always very cognizant of making sure you have the perfect lines on it. On a T-Series, that teardrop shape, you don't want it too round. You don't want it too bulbous looking. You want straight lines leading from that leading edge up into the hosel, and the transition area from coming inside the score lines as you flow up into the hosel. The T-Series of years past, we're almost lacking a little bit of, we like to call it meat in there, like a little bit of material as it flows in to make it actually made the face look a little bit larger than it was, just because that transition wasn't quite as smooth as we wanted it. So this new one, we actually added a little bit of that extra meat in that transition area, which makes the face look even more compact. It makes it look more organic, more natural. And again, all these things just to instill confidence over the ball.
Fred, you did a little filming with Chris. Basically, it was Open Week, I think it was. Did you get to spend a little bit of time with the wedges, and did you form an impression?
Yeah, no, I think what the boys are saying is it's true. They look really good, clean lines. Still got that soft kind of Mizuno feel to them, which I really, really liked. And I was really able to fly them down. I didn't know if there were going to be a difference in performance, saying that the T20 had a lot of material on top to help you kind of get the flight down a little bit, but the new wedges did exactly the same. I showed Chris there how to hit some wedges, and no, they were good.
You're a traditionalist, Fred. Can you be put off something by how it looks at first take, or are you relatively open-minded?
I'm definitely ready to be open-minded. Anything that gets me, I think good players look for flight more than anything. So if you have a wedge that can kind of flight the ball down and spin enough is kind of optimal. If you have a wedge that you don't really like, what you often see is a ball that kind of launch too high. And as long as I can get the flight I want, obviously I want it to look pretty good, but that's the main thing, right? And then obviously it helps with the copper finish. Looks incredible. It looks really, really good. And that obviously caught my eye, and then the flight is where I want it. So yeah, it's a great club.
And the three finishes there, Chris, they're almost like three stages of the same thing, right?
Yeah, you could almost tell the story. I actually have them right in front of me. I'm going to pull these out real quick. You can almost tell the story of development looking at each one. This is the raw one right here. So with the raw, it truly is just that 1025 HD boron material, raw, no plating, no anything. After the forging, we go in and then we mill the face and actually apply our HydroFlow microgrooves to that. But basically, this lives underneath the others. So as we're plating a golf club and getting it to its final cosmetic, the next step and what lives underneath some of the MP stuff of the last couple of years, but also the T22 chrome, underneath it is this copper finish. So as you're applying different layers, you take the raw, there's a layer of nickel and then a layer of copper. That nickel is really there for adhesion because it helps it stay on there better. So this copper is a true copper plating. It's not going to wipe off. It's not going to smear. Like we've had ion plating for the last couple of generations in our blue wedges and some of our black wedges. And there's been chrome underneath that. So it's almost been like that plating was an IP on top of everything else. This is actually what's underneath the chrome. So it's almost like flipping it a little bit, but it won't wear off. So this is what causes a lot of that really soft feel as well. The grain flow forging process paired with that copper really is going to give you the softest feel you've ever had on a wedge. And then on top of that is literally this. So another layer of nickel on top, and then this layer of chrome. So the chrome, this is the more traditional. It is what we call a satin chrome finish, not quite as I like call it white satin, like we've had some of the JPX product where it's a little bit more milky. This is a true like satin chrome finish with some hits of high polish on it. So really the most clean and traditional look, but 3 different finishes for 3 different players who like, just different preferences at address.
So I'm a fan of the chrome because we've not had that for quite a few years. A really proper traditional chrome wedge. It's been a while. But I know the conversation will be on the denim copper. So although we're saying copper, it's not the same copper we might have seen on some other products, right? That real kind of bright copper, it's not that.
Yeah, you're right. So the actual copper itself, what lives under this, like what it is the same copper that's underneath the T20s, or sorry, not the T20s, but excuse me, underneath the MP20 line and some future irons that you're going to see coming up. We did our special edition copper irons that came out, and it was a bright copper. Copper in general starts out pretty bright. And that's why we actually applied what we call this denim copper finish to it. So when you actually have that copper plating, we then put a layer of black IP, ion plating or PVD finish on top of it, but then we brush some of it away so you can actually see the copper shining through. So the reason we did that is because the initial look of just a raw copper is very bright, and it looks like if the sun's going to hit it, you could get some really hot spots on it. What this allows it to do is you have the ion plating that will wear away, but as it's wearing away, the copper is aging. So the copper is doing the what they call the patina process. So it's getting a little bit more aged, gets a little duller and darker as it ages. That's what Matt was talking about earlier. So now we almost pre-age it, but in a different way. And then that's going to wear away and the aging will take place. So you never are going to have that big glare that you get from a raw copper.
So the change in appearance is not the copper wearing away. It's a coloration. It's an evolution.
Correct.
It's an aging of the color rather than a wearing away of the finish.
That's exactly right. You picture like in the States, like an old penny. As an old penny wears, it starts out really bright, shiny copper, and then you see it as it gets years old, it gets almost darky brown, and this is exactly what that same process is going to do.
Nice. On top of that, we've got let's talk about grinds, Matt. So is that so? In your perspective, seeing a lot of players, grinds must be a constant conversation when it comes to wedges.
Correct. Yeah, and more so than anything, we spend a lot of time matching different grinds. The amount of guys who say, "I like heel relief, I like this, and I like this. This is what I've got at the moment, and I want to keep it the same." So, we do a lot of hand grinding of finishings and stuff, really specifically, but like the irons, me personally, I've always been of the opinion that the wedges that we produce do that nicely as it is. You look at the lob wedges we've had in the past, and they do really sit. You flip them open, they do sit. They hug the ground nicely. They do sit quite nicely. So I mean, I personally don't touch my wedges. They've always been stock. They've always, I don't grind anything off mine. But people are very particular with their wedges. So it's one thing having it visually, down. The golf ball suiting the eye, but it needs to interact how people want it to interact. And also, once you roll it open, as soon as you start opening the face, if you see the leading edge riding up, or you see something you don't particularly like, then all of a sudden, you're back of your mind, you're going, "Oof, that looks like I could thin that." That looks like I could dig this, and that's all the things that you don't want coming into people's heads. And I think a correctly fit wedge isn't going to improve your technique. It's only going to help, right? So ultimately, you're still going to swing it the same. You're still, unless you're having lessons and you're working on things, your move into the golf ball is still going to be the same. We're not heroes here. We're not going to try and change people's golf swings through a wedge, but what it will do is make it a whole lot easier to use. And you've got the correct bounce, you've got the correct loft. A lot of the time, a lot of people don't use the correct loft. You've got the correct loft, you've got the correct bounce. All of a sudden, people start clipping shots and going, "Geez, I've never hit it like that in my life." You're popping shots out the bunker, going, "Wow, I didn't know I had that shot in me." But it's not through technique change; it's through getting the correct, grinds and bounces. So that's in the new T22 range. That's been the most fun to be able to play with.
So you've got 4 stock grinds then, Chris, in this range from S to X.
Yeah, there's an S grind, which is the most standard. It's probably the most basic grind. Mostly it's a trailing edge relief. There's a little bit of heel relief on there, but it's more designed for those full shots and those players who need a little bit more bounce and a little bit more soul there. From there, there's the C grind. The D grind is the next aggressive. The D brings in a little bit more toe and heel relief. So it gives you a little bit more versatility if you want to do that toe down shot or heel down shot. Getting more aggressive from there next to the C grind. C, because it almost looks like a crescent shape across the back. It gets even more aggressive where we're just removing more material, brings the effective bounce down slightly. So you actually need to have a little bit better technique because you don't have as much soul there to help you. And then the most extreme would be the X grind. The X grind really gets aggressive everywhere. So a lot of soul taken away, a lot of camber on the heel and the toe, as well as that trailing edge.
So Fred, with 4 grinds there, as a pro, do you generally find like that's enough choice for somebody like yourself, or are you so far down one end of the spectrum you're like maximum grind because you're a great wedge player, or how does that work from your perspective?
No, I think it covers all the bases. You can generally put a golfer in 2 different areas. You're a digger or you're kind of a picker. So you need a lot of bounce or not so much bounce. I think I've always used the stock kind of bounces that Mizuno offers. In the T20, there were 2 different bounce options for the 60. It was one with, I think it's 10 and one with 6, right? And I kind of switched them up depending on what type of conditions I was playing. If I play a really firm course, I want less bounce. If I play a softer, grainier course, I will use a 10. So if I play in Arizona, it's everything is kind of tight, I will use less bounce. If I play in Florida, where it's grainy, I will use more bounce. So I think good players kind of adjust the wedges, some of them a little bit depending on conditions. But I think for an amateur, even a good amateur, more bounce option is always good, in my opinion. Have a 10-degree bounce and then have a low heel relief. That's what 90% of golfers, I think, will go with.
So Chris, Luke's currently on his T7s. So Luke's always has a little hand in wedge design and takes a look at prototypes as they're coming through. Which one of these kind of standard grinds would be closest to what Luke would play?
Yeah, I mean, Luke has such phenomenal form. Lee could literally get away with any of them. But that being said, Luke's form is so good. He knows how to use the soul. He talks a lot when you see him hitting about using the bounce and understanding the shaft angle, and you literally utilizing the bounce as almost like a little bit of a buffer to make sure your shot is going to be more consistent. So Luke's never been one that's used the most extreme bounce. I'd picture him probably in the C grind. I think that's probably going to be the closest to what he uses. But then when you get into the stronger lofted, he's probably going to be more in the S grind there. So what's great is during this year and during the development of these, with a lot of players having off time during the year of 2020 when a lot of these were being developed, we got so much feedback from our tour staff, Luke in particular, where we took a lot of different prototypes. We were mailing back and forth with him all these different iterations. He'd make some little tweaks on it. Hey, I'd love to see this, do this, bring it back. We remake it, send it again. Really, it's a change in the way we develop stuff and got a ton of different feedback on it.
Now, he's generally a traditionalist, but Luke did play the blue, didn't he, when we first brought the blue wedges out? So I guess there's a chance for the copper.
Yeah, I mean, Luke's not afraid. He's an artistic guy. He's not afraid to get something a little bit out there. And when you have a wedge game like Luke's, I think you can be a little aggressive because you're not going to embarrass yourself.
You ready to embarrass yourself, Fred? Are you going chrome or raw copper, denim copper? Where are you going?
Definitely going copper, I think. Yeah, chrome. If you have chrome, you have to play with sunglasses, David. I mean, I live in Arizona. It's sun 360 days of the year.
Yeah. So you're not going raw this time?
Yeah, I'm in between. I mean, I love my raw wedges, but you got to try something new. Those, I know I'm going to be turning heads if I have the copper finish. So I'm probably going to go with that.
Even as a pro, something shiny, something bright can catch your eye and just do something for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I mean, they're just so cool. So I know if I'm supposed to be an ambassador for the brand and I show anyone those, I bet a lot of players will be like, what are those, And then come over and hopefully I hit some good shots too and I convince them to get some Mizuno wedges.
And then just one more little tech piece, Chris. Forging, right? Let's not forget the role of forging all this. Often, we tend to get a little blasé and forget about it. But what Mizuno does incredibly well is grain flow forging. We've been doing this at Hiroshima for more than 50 years. There are other brands that cast their wedges, Chris, and they make perfectly good wedges, and you can play with a cast wedge. However, same brands often will have a forged wedge on tour. Is that accurate, or have I dreamt that one up?
No, that's accurate. There's a lot of cast wedges in the market and then forged wedges that are sold in other regions. I'll speak, for example, in Japan. Japan is a very knowledgeable golf consumer, and there's a lot of golf consumers from Japan that demand a forged wedge. So some of the companies that are US-based companies, you'll see cast wedges here and a forged version of it over in Japan, which to me is really interesting because it's like the more they know, the more they realize we can't get away with this. So, and you see that on tour as well. A lot of players playing the actual forged version of another wedge. So with us, obviously, feel is such an important thing we do. We engineer feel in everything, top to bottom. And the wedge has so many different aspects that all affect the feel. The process, the grain flow forging, the HD forging really takes that a step further. The material, that 1025 boron, it's super soft. I talked about the weighting of the club in terms of having more mass up high in the blade. Talked about that, what it does for center of gravity. That also has an effect on the feel as well, because that reinforces that top line. And then this copper finish, the copper that lives underneath the chrome, is going to like almost turn down the volume on impact to make it feel really soft as well. So there's just so many things where feel comes into play.
I think we should let you have the last word on wedges, so I won't ask anyone else any questions. Spec-wise, Chris, anything to pick out before we move on? We've got right hand, left hand. That's always a big conversation.
Yeah, I mean, right hand, we do have all three finishes available. Left hand, we are going with the chrome only. But for those lefties who are upset about that, don't forget that copper is still underneath that chrome. So they're still getting the benefits from the copper. Spec-wise, in terms of loft and bounce offerings, we actually are going to have a couple more that you'll be able to find on the shelves because of the addition of all the different grinds, we added some extra SKUs. So now there's 3 different 56s, 3 different 58s. Some of those key lofts where people sometimes play it as a sand or a lob, or those kind of tweener lofts. We wanted to make sure you have the access to all the different grinds across that. So we have different options there. And again, just a lot of different things going on with these wedges. And through our custom department, if you're an in-betweener, if you want a 57 degree, a 61 degree, a 51, we've got that available.
So moving on to the driver, the STG, because that's pretty imminent as well. We've actually got a couple out on tour. Matt, we were just talking about OJ Farrell. I think he's got one in play, right?
Correct. Yeah. He's an impressive guy. He hits it hard. A lot of again through the Clutch Pro, who a lot of guys have come to us and we've been kicking them out. And whenever OJ comes up in conversation, even the guys that are playing in his groups, playing with him, they go, "Geez, man, he hits it a long way." He's probably, hands down, the longest guy that I've worked with. I mean, he's like high 180 ball speeds. It's an impressive move, but he doesn't look like he's killing it. Looks like he's just
swings it.
Yeah, he swings it. He's a tall, athletic chap, but yeah, he just kills it. So he's fun to work with. He's fun to see. But he's recently just gone into the G. Yeah, so moved in a few weeks ago. Played challenge last week. Finished top 10. So yeah, he's ticking along, and we're kind of keeping good tabs on him because he's Mizuno right lift your bag from driver to lob wedge, driver to putter now. So yeah, wow. He's an impressive one that we hope will be on people's TVs very shortly.
So I'm assuming the driver must have bedded in pretty well for finished tied 6. So have you had a chance to speak to him yet, or was that a bit too fresh?
I personally haven't, no. But I haven't heard any complaints, which also is nice.
Yeah, I'm guessing if something doesn't work out, you probably hear faster, right?
Correct. Yeah, we don't hear much when they're happy. So yeah, if there's silence, everyone smiles.
Right. Okay, that's good news. So OJ would be the guy that you would expect to play this driver. So historically, the G version of our driver has always been the better player one. Strangely or not, but the real traditional guys, I think it was Dave Dixon and Luke Donald were the two that played the previous G. But the previous G, Chris, was very much a low spin driver, right? So slightly more of a player's shape. I know Matt thought that this new version probably looked even more distinct to the other drivers, more compact, a little bit more of a player's look. But it's always been that player's driver, and it's always been a really low spin driver as well.
Yeah, the G traditionally has been, I'd call it better players in performance, but in look, it's really closely been tied with the rest of the line. So at address, it's almost been difficult to distinguish sometimes between, like in the ST200 line, between the ST200 and the G. There really weren't too many differences in terms of actual head shape. With this STG, it's clearly differentiates itself from the Z and the X. It's a deeper face. It's shorter from heel to toe. It's more of that player's profile. But on top of that, we built in a lot of performance, and performance that doesn't just speak to the better player as well, because you now have the ability to add spin if you need to.
Now, the viewers now will be looking at a picture with 3 irons on there as well, which they're probably harnessing as much attention as the driver, probably more so. So we'll move on to that conversation. But at one point, all these products were being launched at the same time. This wasn't clever marketing. Everything was pictured at the same time, and then the launches got kind of staggered post that event. But that's just to explain why there's 3 irons in that shot that aren't in the marketplace just yet. The interesting thing for me when you started talking about the driver was you said something about it was almost like when you played the previous adjustables, you used the weights to fine-tune everything, but then you knew you were playing an adjustable driver. There was something slightly different about the sound. If you changed the weight positions, they sounded slightly different in different weight positions. They never possibly felt quite as satisfying as the fixed version of the same driver. Like if you could get the fixed version to work, it was almost preferable. But you kind of feel like you've really tightened the sounds between the various settings now.
Yeah, the engineering of a fixed weight driver is a lot different than the engineering of a variable weight driver, where you can really have the ability to move a lot of mass and do a lot of things. If you think about what causes vibration, what causes sound, concentration of mass in a given area basically causes that area to vibrate at a different frequency. So if you're moving a lot of mass and you're moving it over a large area, all of a sudden there's all these different places that need reinforcing. which really isn't possible because the driver's the lightest club in the bag. You don't have a lot of mass to play with. So with the STG, the new one, what we actually did is we shrunk down the tracks ever so slightly. So if you looked at the previous ST200G, it was two very long tracks on the toe and heel. Long tracks require a lot of mass. So a lot of mass means you don't have as much to reinforce, you don't have as much to be able to dial it in, and also where the locations of those weights are going to vary even more. So with that, it was tough to control the sound between locations. So you'd get a couple locations that didn't quite sound ideal. You'd get some that sounded perfect, and then there's some in between. With the new one, by shrinking those tracks, we were able to really focus in on dialing in the sound at every given location. So you don't feel like there's that compromise of just because I got it perfectly fit dialed in for me, you don't feel like you're missing anything because the sound and the impact is very consistent from location to location.
And the new additional weight track, so we shortened those external ones, but there's now a center and deep weight track as well.
Yeah, and you say shorten, it almost sounds like a bad thing. Like, we didn't just shorten them, we made them shorter, but we also moved them more to the extreme. So the toe and the heel weight are further towards the toe and the heel. So you get more movement in relation to the center of gravity, in relation to where it is to the shaft axis. What was missing, though, is if you really want to increase the moment of inertia or the playability or the spin rate of a driver, mass as far away from the face is where you want to put it. That's why you see like the big game improvement drivers, really large footprints, really long from front to back, which is a little bit of a contradiction because I talked about the shape of this as more players. It's a little bit shorter from front to back, but we could concentrate so much mass with this weight track that we put directly behind the back of the golf club. Now you can actually put both weights back there, which moves the total, the total weight of those movable ones all the way as far away as possible, and gives you loads of stability, and also gives you the ability to add spin to even a draw or fade setting.
That's my 100%. That's my favorite addition to this driver, or any driver we've ever done, is that slot there. That there. We looked at that last year before the G came through, and I was saying to Alex, we need, when we were cutting up drivers to see what was going on, we were looking at competitor stuff. We were looking at what's different to our stuff, and that slot there was always that kind of standout. It's so important because with the shaft technology we have now, with loft, with golf ball, you can manage everything else. But if you can pop some more weight back here and make it super forgiving, now you tie in the correct shaft, you get the correct loft, you increase ball speed. All of a sudden, you've got this recipe for a better driver, which we simply just didn't have last year.
And Matt, I think I saw OJ had his in the back setting, one weight there, maybe one in the draw setting. Correct, yeah. Which probably tells you a lot about the nature of the driver, right? So for a really big, strong ball striker like that to want one in the draw setting and one back.
But as a club fitter, if you have got that amount of movement, so you can increase MOI, you can take that one that you just kind of get the face clicking over which you wanted. Now you get the correct shaft because he uses a real stable, real solid shaft. Get the correct loft, lowering that loft, increasing ball speed. He hasn't sacrificed any forgiveness. All he's got is a driver that goes further and a driver that he knows what's going to do. So that and that wouldn't be the case if we didn't have that track there, because we couldn't get the weight far enough back. And then you're in that realm of, we need a low spin driver. Well, you need the option to have a low spin driver. You don't necessarily need to utilize that all the time.
Yeah. Fred, you got to have a hit of this. I don't think you've done any particularly extensive testing just yet. You're currently on the Z, is that right?
Yeah, I'm currently on the C.
And how do you think this one kind of matched up to that in terms of, playing around with the weights?
Yeah, I didn't hit that many shots. We're just on the course messing around kind of. But what I really liked about the ability of changing the weight is that it didn't really change the feel. So sometimes when I've hit drivers that you can change the weight, they feel completely different if you put the weight in a certain area compared to another. This kind of maintained the same feel of the face, but obviously you could adjust the flight and also the trajectory, right? You can, if it's a really windy day, you can move the weights to get the launch lower. And if it's not, and you play in the US, in Arizona, you can just throw that thing straight up in the air. So that's the beauty of it. I come and I stay in your basement in the UK. I got to get that flight down, or stay in Arizona, I can just hit it straight up to the sky. So the opportunity to adjust the club in that way is massive, and without changing the feel, so it doesn't feel like a completely different driver, is something that's an added bonus.
Where do you think you're going to end up driver this year, Fred? I know is driving a strength of your game at the moment, or something you're less comfortable with? Where is it on your scale of 1 to 10?
So driving is definitely my strength. If you look at my strokes gain data, that's the best part of my game. Then wedges and putting. So yeah, I mean, it's whatever Chris is going to put me in, whatever works the best, pretty much. So I look for guys like Chris and the team over here in the US to help me figure that out. But I'm convinced I'm going to find something that's going to work pretty darn well.
If you had to guess, Chris, where's Fred going to finish up on his driver for 2022?
I actually think this G could be a really good option for Fred, just because I've seen him drive and I know his numbers, and he can produce really strong numbers with basically any club in his bag. Drives it great, but I feel like just in the early testing we did with the G, the numbers looked really good, the flight was really good, and the ability to just do those ever so slight fine tweaks is something that's really cool about having that adjustable weight. So that's where if it's not broke, don't fix it. And if you want to just make small tweaks, the ability to do that is something that I think really benefits the better player like Fred. It's really interesting how Fred was talking about, at different locations where the wind varies, or, if you're traveling a lot, tour professional gets to see all sorts of different locations where they play. One thing that's great about this execution of adjustability, where there's a lot of different adjustable ways to do it in the industry. There's a lot of drivers where you can just flip the weight front and back. That gives you really two options: high spin, low spin. That's it. There's other adjustable where you go from toe to heel. So really you're dialing in a left to right, but really that's not something on a day-to-day basis you want to really move around. With this one, we have the ability to adjust both of them independently. So for somebody like Fred, who's traveling around playing in a lot of different locations, he could get somewhere and say, you know what, today I just need it to spin a little less. And you could literally just move basically along that Z axis. You could move the weight there. So it gives you the ability to fine tune from round to round more than you might get with other executions of an adjustable driver.
I know I wanted to pick up with you, Chris. So you did a relatively high-profile fitting for Garrett Clark, who does the GM YouTube channel, right? So you went out there, and actually Garrett was going to be one of the very first guys to get to hit the G driver. Mm-hmm. And in testing, you had everything moving, everything was going quite well. And then with your completely anti-marketing head on, you managed to talk him back into playing the Z driver rather than the G. He had been quite happy with the G. Talk to me about that and how you managed to personally undermine your own launch. How did you do that?
It's never intentional, but we're always looking for what's going to be the best performance and what can you get dialed in the best. We did that fitting in Texas. He plays in Texas. He grew up in Kansas City, an area known for just having flat, tons of wind. So when you see him right off the bat, his ball flight is low, it's penetrating, and you almost think right off the bat, it's like, well, these are not ideal numbers, because if you're fitting somebody just straight, off numbers, off a TrackMan, in a simulator, they're not the numbers you dial somebody into. So when we were working with the G, what we actually were doing was we were looking at, here's where you are. We're going to start pulling weight back, adding loft, all these things to really just bring it up. But ultimately, he's a really good player and he has the ability to do that on his own. This is just the flight he's used to seeing. So it's like we almost were making these little tweaks, and then he's like, oh, you want me to hit it higher? Boom. Change a little bit in terms of the angle of attack. And next thing you know, it's that high towering ball flight. And he was a very straight hitter of the golf ball. And the Z was actually one that gave, with that deeper center of gravity, it gave that launch that he was looking for. So while it wasn't the intention, because he was really the first one to see the G, the Z was a great option for him.
And also probably a lesson in not sort of pigeonholing players, a good player, a less good player. When it comes down to it, we've all got our own kind of little unique quirks, and it's worth it both and finding out which one's right.
Well, and that OJ story is a perfect example of that. As somebody who, okay, the first thing you hear is, all right, he's got 180 plus ball speed. You think, okay, I'm going to shove the weights all the way forward. I'm going to take the left side out of play. But actually, his setup is one in the heel, one in the back. So it's a more controllable ball flight, and one that, maybe he prefers to see that ball fall slightly right to left, or just take the right side out of play, which I know some people with their swing battle a block. So, it all depends on what you are looking for and can get dialed in. And I think it's a great point to never get pigeonholed and just go into a fitting open-minded.
And let's not forget also, this is one part of the puzzle, right? So, this hasn't got anything plugged into it yet. So, you need to know what shaft's going in order to create the setups. And that's when it comes down to the fitters and going to get fit, because the head is so versatile on its own. Now you have the depth of shaft that we offer. All of a sudden, you've got all these options where you go, wow, this guy's going to walk out this fitting a different golfer, because this is dialed, the shaft's dialed. It's a bit like what we were saying about wedges. It's not going to change your technique. It's not going to give you a golf lesson, but you're going to walk out with something that's going to suit you a whole ton better.
I'm curious, Matt.
Go on, Chris.
Sorry. I would say from your side, Matt, when somebody goes into a new driver fitting, do you like to just start with their shaft, or do you like to start everything as like a completely blank slate with every component?
Yeah, I tend to go more off their irons. So what's going on in their irons, and then you keep a spec of what they've got in their drivers, but the heads now, even with our range, the ZX and the G, you could require 3 completely different shafts in those heads, and we've seen that a lot. So there's no real. I wouldn't use that as a starting point, but what you'll normally find is a player's iron shafts and their iron setup is usually quite consistent and usually is repeated. So knowing what they've got in their irons, I think I use as a starting point a little bit, sometimes wrongly, but it gives you an idea on, if they're using X100s, for instance, or Modus 105s, you're going to have an idea of, right, okay, with one light weight, and then you've got an idea of that, because that's a constant part of the bag that you're not looking to change. So yeah, I think knowing the golfer and knowing their move is one thing. What they've got at the moment might not necessarily be correct, but it's a starting point. It's in the back of your mind. But as I say, this is so interchangeable now. The shafts has such a big impact now, so you can really change golfers very easily just through head and shaft.
So Chris, we're getting these heads out relatively soon, so people are about to see these and get their hands on them from October. And just on Matt's point there with fitting, worth remembering that the Swing DNA, the shaft optimizer tool, can actually do a driver shaft recommendation as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that Matt makes about where an iron shaft, it's easy to understand. Maybe it's sometimes easier than a driver shaft to understand, just because there's so many different things that a driver will do. If you're talking about, let's just say, for example, a muscle back iron, that head's going to perform pretty same regardless of which muscle back you have. There are only slight tweaks, but a driver from the Z to the X to the G, they're completely different animals. So to have a nice starting point and something that you do and something you deliver consistently gives you a really great kicking off spot to a driver fitting. And the shaft optimizer is something that will measure that. It'll understand your tempo, your release, and give you a good idea of your swing speed, to then be able to dial in a flex and a weight, to then allow the head to actually take over from there. So the starting point of a shaft based off your irons makes a ton of sense.
And anything to be aware of, Chris, shaft-wise? Anything new come in alongside this driver?
So this driver right off the bat is going to carry over a lot of the same shafts that we have with the current STZ and the X. We've got a ton of different options in there. The hazardous smoke line has been really, really popular in it. Look in the future, though. There may be some new additions coming not too far down the line.
And rare for Mizuno, we're going to go into launch cycles now. Rare for Mizuno to have a new driver in October. So it's kind of become very much its own animal. Is this indicative of like this kind of idea of gradual improvement? You described very well the 3-year plan before. So is this part of like gradual iterative improvement where we might see a few more bits and pieces turning up at more unexpected times because maybe one driver's run out and the new one's ready? And is that how you're viewing the world?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, rather than just force product down your throat, which, you hate to see some companies, it feels like that's the case, where it's like the new one is launching just because it's time for the new one to launch. This one did not launch when it was expected. When we did the STZ and the X, one of the most common questions was, where's the adjustable one? And the honest answer is the adjustable one wasn't ready yet. So what we were doing is we were dialing it in, we were making it perform better, and not just putting it out because of a timeline. We were making sure, in particular, like the sound aspect that we talked about, getting that sound perfect before we launch it to the market.
Okay, so Fred, we need to get you over to Atlanta to see Chris again and have a full fishing with this one, I think.
Mate, yeah. Me first.
You have slightly bigger issues getting to America at the moment, I think, Matt.
Unfortunately, so yeah.
So talking about timelines, Chris, so probably the bigger conversation is we're not going to go into depth on the individual products now, but by the time this film comes out, I believe that we'll have an iron launch in Japan that probably was expected over here in the West as well. Most people out there will have seen that there was a new line of irons that turned up at the Open in a very famous bag of a player that Matt had worked with at some point. That was a little ahead of time. It actually wasn't planned or expected, even though we normally do produce irons around that time of year. They were actually the photo samples that we were working on at the time, and this particular player needed a set of irons. And Matt, we were basically out at the time of Blaze. Was that what happens?
We had one or two sets, and we had one 7-iron as a photo sample on the truck, which he cast his eyes over at more of a, what do you think of these? And that was it. It was like a love
light bulb moment.
Yeah. So yeah, I can't remember where the full set actually arrived from. They were your photo samples, I think.
I think they came straight from the photo studio, Matt. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were popped together, and then they strolled the fairways of Royal St George's.
The happy accident.
Yeah.
One of the conversations, Chris, we're not going to go into too much detail, but the irons themselves, one of the biggest things that came from that is people are used to seeing the Mizuno Pro logo in Japan, and they're used to seeing the MP logo over in the West. And this particular player had the Mizuno Pro logo on their irons. Mm-hmm. So do you want to break the news for everyone? Is that actually the global logo now?
Yeah, it's funny how over the last, we train people to think what they're going to think. And it's so funny how over the last couple of months since Royal St. George, I've had a lot of people come up to me and say, hey, I saw the Japan version of those irons. I haven't seen the US ones. I can't wait to see MP22. But you know what? That actually is the global version of it now. So we are bringing that Mizuno Pro logo to the Western world, and we're very excited about it. Like the story Matt told of the first eyesight on the van. It's an eye-catching logo, and it's just a fresh look to a product line that is a lot different than you might expect. While it looks traditional, there's a lot going on this set of irons.
And but the true story on that is the logo comes for practical reasons, right? It's not a marketing initiative. The previous generation of Mizuno irons in Japan were actually slightly different. So we had MP18, Japan had Mizuno Pro 118. It wasn't actually the same iron, which is why there was a different logo, correct?
Right, that's correct. Yeah, MP18 did have two different versions, where there was the MP18 in the Western world and there was the Mizuno Pro 118 in Japan, because it actually did feature the copper underlay. MP20 was the odd one where it didn't. So those were the same product, two different names. And the honest answer, practicality says, why would you have the same golf club with two different names? I know that's not the sexy story. You'd like to say we brought it over because we refreshened it and brought all this stuff. But in all honesty, it's the same product. Japan's not getting anything special or different in the Western world. So with that in mind, why not unify globally and bring that Mizuno Pro to give a lot of people what they've been asking for a while?
For me, a lot of it is transparency as well. There is an assumption sometimes that Japan has some kind of superior products, and quite possibly with the MP18, they did have a slight upgrade with that copper underlay. So, transparent in the same way we were transparent then. It's probably taken us one generation to catch up, but now we've made the move, and now we have the global application of the Mizuno Pro logo. But it's nice to see. It's a little bit of a blast from the past. But the interesting thing is, if people are expecting a very retrospective looking kind of almost collectible type set of golf clubs, that's not what Mizuno Pro is.
Yeah, they might be a little disappointed if they're saying, oh, traditional logo, that means everything went back to how it used to be, and that's not at all what it is. When we use that Mizuno Pro logo or even the MP logo, our goal is not to make the most traditional, boring, club that could have been made 20 years ago, but it's super clean looking. There's a lot of technology that we pack into it. And honestly, our goal of Mizuno Pro or MP is really to put out what the better player needs. And oftentimes it's a lot of things that the better player is afraid to ask for, just because traditionally a lot of technology comes along with looks that the better player doesn't necessarily like. And that's where that Mizuno Pro is it's an amazing execution of classic looks and unreal performance.
I think just on the flip side of that, which I think we've done really nicely in the last couple of years, is the opposite end of the scale. Just because you aren't perhaps a tour player, you don't want to look like one, and it's the same end of the scale. You've got the Hot Metal Pro that is packed full of forgiveness under the hood, still looks like a really nice golf club. Now you've got the blade, which still looks like a very, very sexy blade. Under the hood, you've got a bunch of technology. And I think that's what we're doing really nice at the moment. We're looking after both ends of the scale at a really nice point.
So we pulled out almost like a test case, Chris, which was, I always think a really good example, a demonstration of your point was at MP25 and maybe MP5. MP25, when it was first launched, wasn't greeted with huge acclaim from the Mizuno traditionalists, was it? Because it was a little bit larger, it had a micro slot, it had technology, and the general feeling was, you can't do that on MP. But these things are tools of work as opposed to collectibles and things to hang on the wall, right? And the passing of time has proven that, and possibly MP5 as well, not a traditional blade. Time has proven that the decisions that made at the time were correct. Now people look back at these products as one being something that really was a benchmark for the industry technologically, and the second one being a product now that everybody kind of clamors for pristine sets of MP5.
It's funny, and I'll even throw another example out there where Mizuno Pro or MP line has kicked off a lot of what has become massive categories within the golf industry. That MP25, you're right, it featured a micro slot, it featured a 1025 boron material, not the traditional 1025 people were expecting. And honestly, that was one of the very first executions globally of a higher COR players looking clubs. So right now that players distance category is one of the biggest ones in the entire market. And honestly, MP25 was like the forefather of that. MP H4 is another example of that. H4 and H5 were golf clubs that, again, they had the MP name and people were like, oh, that's too big for an MP. But you know what? Look at how it's evolved into the HMP and the 225 and all these things coming up with that hollow body construction has become something that is now, you see every other brand doing that. And honestly, Mizuno MP line kicked off that entire category.
And Matt, I think you might have snuck a set of fives in the bag, haven't you? I've seen recently.
I have, yeah.
Where did they appear from, and when did you suddenly get that idea?
Do you know what the honest truth of? I wanted to change shafts, and because we have no stock of anything, I didn't want to take any stock. And I found an old set of MP5s in our storeroom that were old photo samples. They were missing a 5-iron, and I managed to, whatever, this set turned up, and I put some different shafts in them, and I've just fallen in love with them. So it was more of I wanted to see and feel what a different shaft did. I was having a conversation with a player, and I was caught out a little bit that I didn't know some of the answers that he wanted. So I thought, right, I really need to hit the shaft because it's kind of a new thing. So I built this set, and yeah, it went from a mistake and a conversation on the range to having a new set of irons, which has been very nice. I'm playing some nice golf.
Chris, I'd hate to use Matt as evidence. I really would. But to one of your previous points, the essence of Mizuno Pro is making history, not being stuck in it, right? And one of the themes of that is the product that we produce with Mizuno Pro on will be proven in time to be significant. And is that pretty much how you feel about this line that's coming up?
Absolutely. And, the instant thought behind a Mizuno Pro is, oh, classic tradition. And everyone almost gets mad and gets angry at us when it's not just super clean, it's clean, it typically is, but not super traditional, I should say. What we try to do is
it's not nostalgic.
It's not nostalgic, and it's never intended to be nostalgic. So we are very cautious to make sure we don't fall into that trap of making old looking, old performing golf clubs. So while the look may be traditional, what it does is far from traditional. And it's always actually pushing the envelope in terms of technology.
And then the other bigger conversation about that is, why have we delayed from the normal kind of September, October launch through to these irons probably going to start appearing around February now? Is that right?
Yeah, February is going to be the time frame for these. And the honest answer is because it was the right thing to do. We had planned to launch these in the fall. That was the plan all along, even to the point where this STG driver that we showed off, we showed it alongside some of these irons, which might steal some of the spotlight from them. But that's because that was the original timing. But with all things going on the supply chain side, getting product, just delivery times from the entire golf industry, it'd be a shame to order your brand new set of Mizuno Pro irons and all of a sudden you order, and then you have to wait 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks to actually get them. So what we wanted to do was actually write some things internally to make sure that when we can execute on a proper launch, that's what we do. So we pushed it to February so that when it's time to order those, we're going to deliver them to you pretty quickly.
So you actually have the heads. The heads are there on time, but it's also about people that have ordered a set of JPX. We don't want people waiting 4 months for their irons. So the idea is just let things cool off a little bit, let lead times and come back to something closer to normality. We can't control everything that's happening in the world at the moment, but if we can try and do the right thing, we've got more of a chance.
Someone who ordered a set of JPX Tours a month ago and still has a month or two to wait is going to be pretty mad if in their waiting period we launch something new in between. So a lot of it is just making sure we get all caught up and making sure that we're executing right. So not only it's a more pleasurable buying experience and fitting experience for the retailer, but also for the customer, because they don't want to wait. Once you have that set on order, you can't wait to get them in your hands and go out and play.
So I can't leave this conversation, Chris, without a little bit of an overview of the three irons. So whereas before we had everything with the same name, MP20, we had an MMC and an HMB. I'm showing a visual now. We've now got the 221, the 223, and the 225. Could you sum that up relatively simply? So period of time before these are actually launched, so people can start to get their heads around what they are.
Yeah, to start to understand them, it's first off, it's an eye-catching, beautiful range, but the technology is what I'm so excited about. 221 is the Muscleback. It is what you expect from a Mizuno Muscleback. It's small, it's sleek, it feels amazing. Copper underlay, a slight tapered blade, so we've ever so slightly adjusted center of gravity throughout the set. But all of it's not designed really to flight the ball as much as it is to make them the most consistent set we've ever had, from pitching wedge up to 3-iron. So that 221 set is the most traditional blade going. And one of the things we really emphasize is making those scoring irons even smaller, even more compact, really all the things a better player is looking for. I'm going to skip over the 223 and go to the 225 quickly. The 225 is the larger of the heads. It's our hollow construction. It's the next iteration of the HMB. It's a grain flow forged chromoly face and neck with a welded back piece, tungsten that lives very deep in the head. But unlike the HMB beforehand, it started as a set of irons as opposed to starting with a fly high. So it became even more iron shaped, smaller scoring irons, more iron-like appearance from top to bottom. Fantastic looking set that's going to deliver a lot of performance and a lot of ball speed. The 223 is the really interesting one in between, because that's the one that's taking a big jump. The 223, if you looked at where that iron lived in the last couple generations, it was a shallow cavity, then it was an MMC, and now it actually features a chromoly forging with a micro slot, but it's in a very compact head. It's smaller than the MMC was beforehand. It's almost like the performance of the JPX 921 forged really dialed down into the head size that even a better player has no idea how much pop they're going to get out of it.
And I know I've seen some internal numbers that the COR of the face is really high for a club that small, correct?
Yeah, the amazing thing about it, it's the smallest high COR iron we've ever done. And it's actually a higher COR than the JPX Forge because it is so small and powerful.
So we really moved that on from SC, where we had almost like a no-tech middling club, to the MMC, where you had a really good MOI club, very stable, but a lot of thickness behind impact, which meant thickness also meant stiffness, I guess, of the face.
Yeah, you can't really get. Yeah, the MMC struggles a little bit. It's great for moving weight, but what it's not great at is high flight and ball speed because you have a lot of mass behind impact.
And one of the reasons you've been able to shrink down the HMB into the 225 is that there's a new product at that end of it, which is the MP Fly High.
That's right. There's an MP Fly High that's a blacked out driving iron. It is no nonsense driving iron. It is the highest ball speed we've ever produced, highest COR on a driving iron. It features the same base material as our STZ fairway wood, which we've all seen how good that thing performs. I know Matt's had some success already with that Fly High getting into bags right away. And again, that by having that golf club, that allowed the 225 to get even smaller. So again, it completely rounds out the line. So really from top to bottom, you could put together so many wonderful sets. It's unbelievable.
Matt, we showed you these 3 sets a couple of months ago. One of the things that you picked up on is how they all kind of live very kind of nicely in their own lanes. Almost like the need for splitting sets was maybe less.
That's what I was about to say. I've said it before, but the 3 sets of irons and the standalone driving iron now, they don't stand on each other's toes one bit. And that's why it's quite exciting from an internal brand, because you've got 3 very different sets of irons. And that's only going to help the fitting process. We're not a brand that's ever done 12 iron sets alongside each other. We're not a brand that has bought things out just for the sake of bringing something out just to tick a box. If we're bringing out 3 new irons now, they fit the bill. You've got one that does one thing and it's going to do that. You've got one that's going to do this and it's going to do that. And that's what I like about the 3 new ones is they don't need to be split. You can if you want, but they don't need to, because they are 3 very individual iron sets that look after themselves very nicely.
Fred, I don't think you've actually had these in hand yet, have you? Haven't made it into your world just yet?
No, I haven't hit them, but I've seen them at the photo shoot. I get to see them, and they're incredible looking. So I'm pretty pumped to put them into play, or at least try them out, because just like you guys saying, this is a very classic look to it, very clean look. But when you got Chris right next to you, you get to know all the information and all the data behind why it's designed a certain way. So yeah, it's going to have a lot of technology too, not just looks.
And you don't have quite such a retrospective bag like Matt. What have you got in play at the moment?
So I put the JPX 921 forged in my bag just because I needed that extra launch. Where I play most golf, it's all about carrying bunkers. It's not much wind. So for me, they worked out a lot better. And also, if you're a little bit off one day, it's nice to have a 4 and 5 iron that won't break your fingers if you miss it a little bit. So the JPX Forge has been fantastic for me. I never expected to put those into play. Most would expect me to put the Tours into play, but it just kind of helped me to get the ball up a little bit. And I don't necessarily move my irons that much. I don't really like to overly fade them or draw, and I kind of like a higher, straighter flight to them. So it was a perfect fit for me. So most likely I would be in the middle model of the new irons too.
Okay, well, you'd be a good test case then, because like I said, we're basically talking similar performance, but smaller, maybe a little bit hotter. So Chris, good lesson there, and not sort of pigeonholing golfers too much.
Absolutely. I think definitely give these a try, but I love that each one has a very clear identity. Each one has its own lane. And then when you decide, hey, once I get to this loft, you know what, now I care a little bit less about the forgiveness, or a little bit more about the launch or something like that. And you can actually mix and match them great. So giving them each one an identity allows us to do so much on the design side, really get focused in. So when you go in for that fitting, come in understanding what you want, and then we'll find the perfect setup for you.
So I think we'll take a break there, Chris, because these irons are still many months away. I think what we'll do is we'll catch up with you nearer the time, and maybe you can take us through each model one by one. But I appreciate you giving us a little preview of it at least, because I know these are going to be out in the public arena through the launch that's coming in Japan. I know there's going to be a lot of slightly confused people out there wondering if they're getting the same or not. So I think it's important to give that kind of clarity. So much appreciated there. If you wanted to leave everyone with a parting thought, Chris, the thing you're most excited about of everything that's coming?
I'm excited just to see people's eyes when they hit any of these new models with the wedges. Just the look of the denim copper is catching everybody off guard. The STG driver, it's not just the low spin monster. It can do a lot more than that. So that club is one that a lot of people need to go out and try. And when the Mizuno Pro line comes, man, the performance is unlike anything that's ever looked like that at a dress.
Perfect. Appreciate that, Chris. Matt, anything from you?
I think we've nailed it. I think we need to, as you say, it'd be awesome to see people when they're hitting these and they're trying these and trying different bits, because we've got all options covered now.
And we'll try and kick those MP5s out of your bag.
Yeah, by all means, we just need more stock.
Fred, so we'll hopefully catch up with you in the next month or so. But all the best with your playing opportunities. We genuinely hope you manage to get out there and get what you deserve, really, with the form that you're showing at the moment. So I hope maybe we'll get you back in Europe again.
Yeah, no, just need to get an opportunity to play and hopefully play well. Appreciate you, my man.
Brilliant. All right, guys. Thanks, everyone. And I'll catch up with you all in about a month or so.